They sat me in the hallway on my birthday, but the cake I brought wasn't for them. It was for the lawyer who changed everything that day. I was not surprised when Chloe's voice sliced through the chatter of guests in her grand living room, commanding me to the hallway. I had been preparing for this humiliation all week, though it still felt raw. I rehearsed my calm face in the mirror, afraid to crumble. They had invited me to Nathan's birthday celebration to appear, to thank me, to keep up appearances, but I knew it was a show, and my part was to fade into the walls. I carried with me a small round carrot cake, spiced and sweet, baked early in the morning, a tradition I insisted on, even after years of being pushed to the margins. It was modest, edges cracked, but baked with memory and hope. I walked through the archway. The room was full. Chloe's business partners, investors, friends in suits and dresses, laughing over champagne flutes. They parted like curtains as I entered. My heart tightened when I saw the cameras Chloe live streaming. I felt every shutter snap like a judge's gavel. Every eye turned, every lens pointed. I felt naked under their scrutiny. Before I passed the buffet, Chloe's voice rang out. "Mother, what century did you bake that from? Don't embarrass me. Go sit in the hallway and don't let our guests see you in that shabby sweater." She weaponized words, sharp and swift. Her words landed like stones. They hit me deep in places I forgot still hurt. That shabby sweater. I felt the sting of years hidden in a single phrase. She turned away as I stood frozen, hands trembling, the cake heavy in my grasp. I heard a guest murmur, a laugh. Slowly, I retreated to the hallway. Each step felt like exile in my own home. The corridor was narrow, lit by a single chandelier whose bulbs flickered. It smelled faintly of old carpet and cleaning detergent. To one side stood a mop bucket, bristles faded. To the other, the door to the powder room. I sat on a folding chair, in truth, a cleaning cart pushed into a corner. Inside, the party roared, glasses clinking, laughter rising. Chloe's voice was the crescendo, delivering a toast to new beginnings, success, and gratitude while I sat alone. She held her microphone to the crowd. "Let us celebrate our future and those who have grown wise with age." A polite applause followed. I steadied myself and quietly walked to the small fridge in the hall closet. I placed the cake inside, wrapped in its tin. I turned, brushing my hand on the peeling wallpaper, and returned to the folding chair. The corridor door cracked open. A waiter peeked, saw me, then backed away. I heard him whisper into his sleeve, "She should be inside." I would not let them rewrite my dignity. I held my posture. The cake was not for them. They had forgotten that birthdays are not for show, they are for witnessing life. A soft voice, almost drowned by applause, drifted down the hallway. Chloe's public toast. "To my dear mother, thank you for being here." I smiled bitterly. I pulled out my phone. I typed, carefully, a message to my lawyer, Miguel Reyes. "Tonight, the celebration ends. I brought my gift. I dared hope it would change everything." I pressed send. Then I locked the screen. There was no magic button, only resolve. If you have ever been made invisible in your own home, if you know what it is to be spoken of like a burden instead of a mother, then do me one kindness. If you feel justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. I leaned back against the wall, folding my hands in my lap. The party music hummed through the door, their laughter, their glasses, their polished shoes, their lives, so vibrant without me. I closed my eyes and allowed memory to carry me. My mind wandered to Nathan as a toddler, his first birthday here, his sticky fingers in cake icing, his laughter echoing through the halls. That home was built on promises we made as a family. Yet tonight, I was nothing more than a ghost in the hallway. I opened my eyes. The lights over me were dim but persistent. The tape on the walls is peeling. The cleaning cart bristles stiff. My legs ached, but I kept myself upright. Then, footsteps echoed down the hall. I snapped to attention, refusing to cower. A door cracked behind me. Someone tried to enter, then retreated. My throat tightened. The spotlight becomes my witness, the hallway my prelude. I whispered to myself, they invited me to a show, but tonight I changed the stage. I picked up my phone again, checking Miguel's reply. I'm ready. Wait for my cue. A guest emerged, a young man in a dark suit. He paused at the hallway entrance, saw me, swallowed. I rose. He stepped back. Lights from the party spilled into the corridor. The music paused for a moment. Chloe's voice cracked in surprise behind the door. I held my breath. And then the hallway door flung open. Miguel entered, holding a file, a small group behind him. He walked toward the party, toward Chloe, toward justice. I followed him out, cake still in hand, stepping into their celebration, but on my own terms. When I was younger, I used to think that silence kept a family whole. I believed that if I worked hard, loved quietly, and never raised my voice, peace would follow. I was wrong. Silence is not peace, it is permission, and I gave my daughter permission to erase me one piece at a time. My name is Ellie Bradford. I grew up in a small house near the edge of Cleveland, with peeling white paint and the sound of freight trains passing at night. My husband, Michael, was a kind man, a steady bookkeeper who loved jazz and believed every problem could be solved with patience. When he died, I was 46. The day after the funeral, I found the envelope from his life insurance policy, $82,000. It was meant to carry me and our daughter, Chloe, through hard times. I promised myself that money would only ever be used for her future. For years, I worked as a junior accountant at a small firm. My hands grew stiff from typing, but I never complained. Chloe was clever and ambitious. Even as a child, she would scold me for counting pennies, saying, "You think small, Mom. I'll never live like this." I thought it was confidence. I called it strength. I told her, "Just remember, strength without kindness is just cruelty in a nicer dress." She rolled her eyes. When she turned 28, she started her first company, an online wellness brand. She said it was going to revolutionize female leadership. The word she used most often was empire. I didn't understand much about startups, but I understood risk. I warned her gently, "Debt is a hungry friend, Chloe. Once it eats, it never stops." She smiled and said, "You're old, Mom. You wouldn't get it." 2 years later, her empire collapsed. She came to me with tears that felt practiced. "I just need a bridge loan," she said. $60,000. "I'll pay you back in months. I have investors waiting. It's just timing." That night, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at Michael's life insurance statement, the one thing I had promised never to touch. The next morning, I went to the bank and sold it. When I handed her the check, she didn't even hug me. She only said, "You won't regret this." She was wrong. The business folded again. Her so-called investors disappeared. I received a letter from the bank saying the personal guarantee had defaulted. I asked Chloe what happened. She said, "It's not my fault. You jinxed it. You never believed in me." I remember standing in her kitchen as she said it, her voice sharp, her nails clicking against her phone screen. "You don't understand ambition," she said. "You've always been small-minded. Maybe that's why Dad died broke." That night, I sat in the dark and thought about Michael's jazz records still collecting dust in the attic. I had lost him, and now I was losing her. Chloe reinvented herself after that failure. She married a venture capitalist 10 years older, a man named Robert Whitmore, and suddenly, her social media was filled with designer handbags, charity galas, and motivational quotes about resilience. She told the world she had built her wealth from nothing, from the ashes of struggle. The interviews called her a self-made woman. They printed headlines like, "From broke to boardroom, Chloe Whitmore's rise." I watched from my small apartment. Her last name changed. My name vanished from her story. When I saw her on TV once, she said, "I came from a difficult childhood. My mother didn't believe in me. I had to fight my way out of that environment." I remember my hands trembling so hard, the remote fell to the floor. The truth was, Chloe never escaped me. She just learned how to erase me. When Robert left her 3 years later, she walked away with enough settlement money to buy the lakefront house where she now lived. I tried to call her, to say I was proud she was standing on her own again. She didn't answer. Weeks later, she texted, "Don't call this number again. I'm rebuilding my brand." Then came the part I didn't learn until much later. When her company folded the first time, she had taken out a small business loan. She needed a co-signer. The signature on that form looked exactly like mine, only I never signed it. I only discovered this when Miguel, my lawyer, showed me the file last year. "Ellie," he said softly, "this was from the bank archives. The signature here, it's not yours." He pointed to the loop on the E, the shape of the tail. I recognized the imitation instantly. Chloe had taken my old medical paperwork, the power of attorney, from when I had a brief surgery, and copied my signature to secure her loan. When the company failed, the liability fell back on her. She blamed me for dragging her down, when all along she had built her success on forgery. I remember the night she came to visit me after that disaster. She stood at my door in a coat that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She looked at me as if inspecting something fragile and unworthy. "You ruined me," she said. "You told me not to dream. You made me cautious. You're a curse." "A curse?" I asked quietly. "I sold my future for yours." She laughed, a hollow sound. "Exactly. You sold it, and look what your thriftiness bought." Then she turned away, her heels clicking down the porch steps. Years passed, and the public forgot her scandals. She returned to the spotlight as an influencer for family balance and elder care. She smiled on magazine covers, claiming, "I take care of my aging mother, it keeps me grounded." People adored her for it. They called her inspirational. Sponsors paid her to speak about gratitude. She would bring me to events sometimes, not as a mother, but as a prop, a reminder of her humble roots. She'd tell people I was proud of her. She'd tell me to keep quiet and smile. Once, at a charity dinner, she leaned in close and whispered in my ear so no one else could hear. "If you embarrass me, I'll put you in a nursing home before dessert." I smiled through it. I always did. Now, as I sat in her hallway on Nathan's birthday, I understood something I had not before. She didn't hate me because I failed her. She hated me because I reminded her of what she became. She built her empire on lies, and every time she saw my face, she saw the foundation cracking. There's a kind of grief that doesn't cry anymore, it just waits. That night, when I gave Miguel the USB, I knew the waiting was over. For years, she had erased me, redrawn our story, reshaped me into a ghost that fit her narrative. But ghosts have memory. And I was about to remind her what the living remember best, the truth. I sat in the hallway, bone-tired but upright. The muffled clinks of glasses and the quiet hum of conversation came through the half-open door. I watched the shoes below the doorway, soft loafers, heels, polished leather passing in and out, guests drifting like phantoms. I inhaled the stale carpet scent, the faint hint of perfume wafting from inside. In my lap, I held the small gift box with the carrot cake. In my handbag, tucked beneath tissues and receipts, were the documents I dared not bring out earlier. I unzipped the handbag slowly, finger trembling. I pulled out a stack of photocopies, loan agreements, a falsified signature, a copy of that Zoom transcript, and a slim silver USB drive. I laid them on my lap, smoothing edges. My heart pounded. I traced my finger across the topmost page. "Loan cosigner, E. Bradford." I whispered to myself. This is what they hid. I pressed play on the USB in my throat, in my memory. The voice of Chloe appeared on my phone speaker, distant but sharp. "That old lady? She's just a PR prop. My mother? Who cares about her?" I felt the cold rush of betrayal. Her tone, as she said it, dismissive, cast off hurt deeper than any slap. I closed my eyes for a second, then opened them. I allowed a sad smile to form. "It is okay," I whispered to the empty corridor. "They do not need to eat cake to understand the truth." I coughed softly. I packed the documents back into their folder and tucked the USB into a corner of my bag. I stood. My legs ached, but I straightened my spine. The party noise from inside stung my ears. The laughter, the music, the clinking glasses, they had built this world without me. Time slowed. The door to the hall cracked open, and Miguel, my lawyer, appeared in the doorway. He looked startled to see me sitting there, alone, dressed in my modest coat. His briefcase hung at his side. He paused, then stepped in quietly. I held out the cake tin and the USB. My voice was calm. Tonight is not just Nathan's birthday, it is the night everything ends. He nodded, mouth tight. He took the items gently, no gesture wasted. Behind him, the hallway light flickered. In that moment, Chloe's voice rose, drifting into the hall from the party. Here's to the next 100 million in revenue. Mom believed in me when no one else did. Miguel's jaw clenched slightly. He closed his eyes as though steeling himself. I felt his hand at my back, guiding me slowly. I followed him silently toward the door. As we passed the threshold, I caught sight of Chloe's face in the crowd, frozen mid-smile. The guests parted, some glancing at me, others turning away. The cameras whirred. It was my cue. I stepped into the room, holding the cake and the USB like evidence. A hush fell, so sharp it cut the laughter. Chloe's eyes widened in shock. The guests shifted, rearranging their perceptions in that single moment. Miguel cleared his throat and raised a hand for quiet. He placed the folder on a nearby table and said, loud enough for everyone, "Ladies and gentlemen, this celebration is about to change. Miss Bradford has evidence that challenges everything you've been told. The words, the contracts, the narrative that she was silent or uninvolved, they are lies." Chloe's face reddened. She tried to raise a protest, but her voice cracked. The hubbub of voices rose, questions cascading. I stood behind Miguel, chest tight, watching the faces turn. Then Miguel continued, softer. "She brought that cake as a gesture, but this cake is not for you. This cake is for justice." He opened the USB, projected the Zoom clip onto a screen behind Chloe. Everyone heard the words, "That old lady? She's just a PR prop." The room grew still. The veneer cracked. Chloe's lips trembled. She looked at me. I met her gaze steadily, no fear, no apology. The truth had walked into the room on that USB. She stuttered, You manipulated this party." Miguel cut in. "No, she simply invited the truth in." The air vibrated. The cameras switched to faces, to shock, to thumbnails of betrayal. The cake sat on the table, already partially unwrapped. Guests stared at it with uncertain hands. And I knew, the hallway, once my prison for the evening, had become the entrance to the reckoning. I walked into the center of the room with Miguel behind me. The music died mid-note. Glasses froze in mid-air. A hush fell, like a curtain closing. Miguel raised his hand. "May I have your attention?" he said steadily. "Ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, this evening's celebration is about to become a tribunal of truth." Chloe's smile cracked. She took a step forward. "Miguel, this is a party." Miguel held up a hand. "No, it is a court of conscience. I present to you the will of Nathan's grandfather, Mr. Bradford." He motioned to a side table where a clean leather folder lay. He opened it and pulled out the document. He read, "To my beloved wife, Ellie Bradford, I hereby bequeath my home and all associated property to remain in her name. Under no circumstances may it be transferred without her explicit, verifiable signature. Should she be disrespected, that property shall revert to my trust fund for the care of the elderly." He held the will aloft. "That is the legally binding will. It stands. And yet, the title was changed without her consent." Chloe's voice cracked as she attempted to laugh it off. "Mother gave me the house she wanted me to carry it on," she said. Miguel shook his head. "No," he said. "When she was hospitalized after a fainting spell, the attending physician recorded in his video log that Mrs. Bradford was not to sign legal documents under stress. We have the video, the notation, and the timestamp. And we have a recorded conversation from that night in which Chloe says, 'I'll make her sign it. I'll fake the rest.'" A wave of disbelief rippled across the room. The faces of the guests, investors, friends, some gasped. Many stared at Chloe. She went pale. Miguel advanced another piece of evidence, a side-by-side analysis of signatures. "This is Mrs. Bradford's authentic signature from decades. This, submitted to the county records office, is a fake. The loop on the E is wrong. The pressure is inconsistent. It was traced from her medical paperwork." He projected the images behind Chloe. She swallowed hard, eyes darting. "You can't do this here," she stammered. He replied softly, We already did. Because those who wrong her thought she would be silent. Tonight, she speaks with law and evidence. The guests remained silent. Chloe sat down abruptly, hands trembling. Nearby, someone crumpled a napkin, another dropped a glass quietly. Miguel closed the folder. This is not revenge, it is restoration. The title reverts to her. Chloe Bradford is held accountable for forgery, breach of trust, and financial malfeasance. With that, he stepped aside. The hush broke, murmurs flooded the room. Chloe sank in her chair, face in her hands. Guests moved in clusters, whispering. The grand party had transformed into a courtroom drama in real time. I stood behind Miguel, heart pounding but composed. The hall no longer felt like a prison. It felt like the place where justice knocked. I felt a tremor in the air when Miguel tapped the remote. The party lights dimmed, and the projector in the corner flickered on. The screens that had shown slides of Nathan's childhood now glowed with a pre-recorded video. Guests in tuxedos and gowns shifted in their seats, leaning forward. The video began innocently. Chloe sitting at a desk, patting the shoulder of a costumed caregiver who whispered into a hidden mic. The caregiver leaned forward, gently fanning Ellie's face as if comforting an elderly woman. The camera then cut to a night scene. Ellie sleeping, her face soft in the low light, the sheets pulled up to her chin. Chloe's voiceover, "Mom needs rest, she is fragile." The caregiver steps forward, brushes Ellie's forehead, then looks at the camera with a pained expression. The audience gasped. Some covered their mouths. Investors' eyes darted. A woman in a silk dress stood, clutching her clutch. A man turned off his phone recording. Miguel did not let them recover. He spoke clearly. "This is the performance you all were sold. Chloe's PR stunt." He advanced the footage. It showed Chloe rehearsing gestures with the caregiver, telling her to act concerned, instructing her to hold a damp cloth, lean in, speak gently. The camera panned back to the sleeping woman's face, Ellie's face. The scene felt intimate, raw, even violated. The whispers grew louder. Phones came out, recording their recorders. A handful of guests murmured, "She knew all along." Others fidgeted, sliding toward the exits. Chloe jumped up and pointed wildly. "Stop this, you are lying about me. My mother is manipulating the narrative. She is a control freak." She raised her phone. "I am live streaming this. You will see the truth." Miguel stayed calm. He raised one hand to quiet the room. "By order of the court," he said, "the ownership and assets have already been frozen pending investigation. This event is now under legal embargo. You may not distribute or broadcast any further footage." Then he dropped another bomb. He handed out copies of a sealed court summons addressed to Chloe for charges of fraudulent financial misrepresentation and elder exploitation. Chloe's knuckles turned white. She looked at the printed summons, the eyes of her investors, her patrons, her public. She had built an image on being caring, compassionate, filial. The video had peeled it off. One guest coughed, another whispered, "So, it was all fake?" A man stepped toward Chloe, then recoiled. Another investor got up and exited quietly. The room felt thinner, emptier. Cameras from the media corner turned their lenses away from Chloe and toward me. I stood beside Miguel, quiet but steady. The cake tin in his hand gleamed under the projector's light. Chloe's voice stuttered. "You're using my own staging to slander me?" Miguel lifted a document. "We have testimony from the caregiver, unedited phone recordings, contracts, and payment records. And now, you are receiving legal notice in front of your guests." Chloe crumpled into her chair. She paled. The guests around spread out, leaving circles of empty seats. The party had collapsed inward. Only the video, the documents, and the silence remained. I stood in the courtroom, the light filtering through tall windows, casting bars of shadow on the bench. Chloe sat across from me, rigid, face ashen, clasping her hands tight. Her lawyer rose to speak first. "This is not a criminal trial," he began, voice smooth. "It is a family misunderstanding. Mother and daughter always have disagreements. My client meant no harm. She believed she was protecting the home." Miguel stood and nodded solemnly. When he spoke, his voice carried through the room. "Your Honor," he said, We are not here for emotion. We are here for evidence, and we have enough to unravel the web she wove. He turned to the judge and clicked a remote. On the screen, the forged loan documents appeared, signed with Ellie's name, but in handwriting analysis marked as imitations. He handed up a stack of the same contracts, cross-referenced with bank statements showing money transfers, some traced into shell companies registered under names Chloe controlled. He looked at Chloe. You used your mother's name, her credit history, her trust, to build your venture. You used her funds as collateral. You breached your fiduciary duty. That is not misunderstanding, that is exploitation. The courtroom murmured. Chloe's lawyer opened his mouth to interrupt, but Miguel raised his hand. Your Honor, we also present testimony from Miss Rosa Kent, the caretaker who was allegedly paid to assist Mrs. Bradford. The judge nodded. Miss Kent took the stand, trembling slightly. I was hired, she said, voice low, to act sympathetic, to pretend concern. She paused, swallowing. But nights I walked past Mrs. Bradford's room. I heard her crying. I heard her sobbing alone. She did not know I could hear. She felt betrayed. Chloe's face paled. She looked down. The judge asked Chloe, Is this your signature on these contracts? Chloe hesitated. I thought it was procedural, I was told, Mother agreed. Miguel leaned forward. But you forged it, knowing she could not consent in that hospital state. Chloe's lawyer protested. That claim is speculative. The judge held up her gavel. Quiet. She reviewed the evidence, the will, the recorded instructions, the testimony. She looked at me, then back at Chloe. In that moment, I held my breath. This court finds in favor of Mrs. Ellie Bradford, the judge declared. The courtroom gasped. She continued. Chloe shall immediately surrender all interest in the real estate titled under Bradford property, returning ownership to Ellie Bradford. Chloe is permanently barred from approaching or contacting Mrs. Bradford, a restraining order to enforce a safe distance. Chloe must repay $200,000 plus interest and penalties for fraudulent use of funds. All recovered assets shall be directed to Ellie Foundation, a nonprofit supporting elderly rights, established by Mrs. Bradford. Chloe crumpled in her chair, lips trembling, crying silently. Her lawyer stood to object, but the judge looked him in the eye and said, Object overruled. The record speaks. I felt warm tears at the edge of my eyes. Not joy for what is joy and devastation, but relief. The law had seen me, heard me. Chloe was led away, head bowed. The gallery emptied bit by bit. Only I and Miguel remained. I rose slowly, walked to meet the judge, offered a nod of gratitude. Outside the courtroom, photographers flashed. Reporters whispered. As I stepped into the hallway, I glanced back once. Chloe's silhouette receded through the doors. I bent and ran my fingers across the architectural carving just inside the entry, the initials E+M from when Ellie and Michael built that home. The walls had seen me as a wife, a mother, a widow, and now as a victor. I walked out into the sunlight, breathing deep. Every injustice that had echoed in the halls would now echo in the law. Nathan arrived at my modest apartment just before dusk. The light slanted through the curtains, painting golden stripes across the wooden floor. He knocked, and I opened the door to him, hands trembling, eyes bright. He extended a small velvet box. Grandma, I kept this, he said, voice thick with memory. Inside lay a silver hairpin, delicate filigree, the monogram E+M, etched faintly, the hairpin Michael gave me on our 10th anniversary. Nathan reached past me and slipped it into my hand. Mom told me you wouldn't want old things, he whispered. So I hid this. I kept it safe. Tears stung my eyes. I closed my hand around his, pressing his fingers to mine. Thank you, my dear, for remembering. My voice cracked, but steadiness followed. I tucked the hairpin into my lapel, near my heart. Nathan swallowed, looking at the certificates, plaques, and documents lining my walls, evidence of lawsuits, photographs, news clippings. He cleared his throat. Grandma, I want to help. I want to do something big with Ellie Foundation. I don't want you to do it all by yourself. I looked at him, 15, lanky, earnest. You'll carry more than I ever could, I said. He smiled shyly. I've been saving too. From odd jobs, tutoring. I want to donate toward legal aid, help elderly people like you were helped. I want to manage programs, do the social media, talk in schools. My chest tightened. I had dreamed this day, but only in secret. Nathan, I whispered, what you're offering your youth, your time is more precious than you know. He nodded. I want your legacy to live. I want people to see Grandma Ellie not as a background story, but as a champion. I swallowed. I thought of Chloe, the betrayal, the willful erasure. I thought of the hallway, the cake, the court, and now, this boy before me holding a hairpin, offering his future. I pulled him into a hug. He fit into my arms as if made for them. We will build it together. I will teach you everything I know, and when I can't carry it, I'll know you will. He pulled back, face serious. Grandma, you deserve applause, but also to rest. Let me help. I nodded. In that moment, I passed not a throne, but a torch. We sat at the small kitchen table. Nathan brought out his savings envelope, emptied it into a jar labeled Foundation Start. I brought out the blueprints for the foundation's first office. He unfolded them, handed me pen. He said gently, let me sign along your shoulders. And I did my hand over his writing the future in partnership, trusting him more than I ever trusted anyone. In that soft glow, with that hairpin in my lapel, I felt not alone. The legacy would outlive us, heal others, carry forward the cost of betrayal. Nathan looked up. Grandma, he said quietly, will you let me present at your next court case? I want the world to see you, not just a story, but a force. I smiled, feel a spark deep in my bones I thought had died. Yes, Nathan, I said. When the time comes, you will stand there as my voice. Outside the window, the sun dipped further. The shadows stretched, but inside, with that hairpin near my heart and my grandson beside me, the darkness was only a stage for the light. We would carry forward Ellie Foundation. We would stand for truth, for dignity, for those erased, and together we would see justice linger in places long silent. The day of the grand opening dawned cool, with sunlight glinting off windows and leaves whispering in a mild breeze. The address announced on every invitation was now the Ellie House, Center for Legal Support of the Elderly. A banner hung across the entrance, built from memory, protected by justice. The security staff wore crisp navy uniforms. The walkway was lined with flowers, the gardens mulched and pruned. I stood just inside the doorway, dressed in a simple, pale dress, my hair pinned back with that silver hairpin Nathan had given me. Nathan stood beside me, tall now for 15, jacket buttoned, hands clasped respectfully. The first guests filed in, community leaders, local news teams, neighbors, a few elderly people escorted by volunteers. Cameras clicked. Applause greeted me as I stepped forward. The building's interior gleamed. Hardwood floors, accessible ramps, offices with glass walls, meeting rooms labeled Advice Room, Advocacy Office, Elder Services Hub. On a red velvet easel, near the entrance was a framed photograph. A picture from Chloe's birthday party, the hallway door half open, strip of light on the carpet, the small cake tin on the floor. Beneath in golden script, the cake that changed the legacy. The plaque glowed. Someone whispered, powerful statement. I let them. A hush fell as the opening remarks ended. Nathan and I walked through the hall, greeting guests. Volunteers led visitors to tours, staff introduced themselves. The mood was hopeful, dignified, strong. Then, at the edge of the crowd, I noticed two figures approaching the gate, Chloe and her lawyer, dressed in dark suits. Chloe held a bouquet of pale roses. They whispered as they walked, glancing at the banner above and then at me, their faces taut with regret or fear, perhaps both. A security guard stepped forward, blocking their path. Chloe cleared her throat. Mrs. Bradford, Ellie, she called out, voice shaking. We came here to apologize, to ask, will you forgive me? Her lawyer motioned. Your Honor, we come in peace. We hope to make amends. I stepped from the crowd into the walkway. I looked at them both, in the open, with all eyes drawn. The breeze lifted petals from the flower beds. I held their gaze. No, I said softly, but clearly. Forgiveness is not a duty. Justice has done its work. That is enough. Chloe flinched, lips pressed. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The lawyer opened his briefcase, but made no move. Guests murmured. Cameras zoomed in. I turned my gaze upward to the framed photograph. Above the entrance it glowed in the light. I exhaled slowly, then faced Nathan and the guests. "Let us walk inside," I said. "This day is not about apologies. It is about purpose." I turned to Chloe again. "You are welcome to observe, but not welcome to enter." The guard nodded behind me, ushering her lawyer back. Chloe took a tentative step toward the entrance, then stopped, shoulders slumping. She stared at the building, its bright glass, its promise, its name carved above, Ellie House. She saw the photograph of that cake, the reminder of the night. The truth stepped in. She spoke quietly, more to herself than to me. "I lost everything." Her voice cracked. She glanced side to side, unable to step forward. She turned away and began to walk off. Her lawyer followed. Guests parted for them. I watched until they disappeared into the street. Then Nathan squeezed my hand, and we walked into the building, side by side, together. We passed through the lobby, under the banner, past the framed photograph. The security doors closed behind us with soft hiss. Inside, I paused, inhaled the new air of this place built for justice. Nathan looked up at me, eyes bright. "Grandma," he said, "this is your legacy. Thank you for letting me be part of it." I smiled. "Thank you, Nathan. This is ours now." I turned to the assembled guests and said, "Welcome to Ellie House. May it be a home for those who believed no one saw them. May it be a voice for those silenced, and may no one ever sit in a hallway again when their truth deserves a room." The applause rose, gentle but steady. Nathan and I walked toward the main doors, through the corridor we had built together. Outside, the sun dipped low. The banner glowed red gold in the dusk. The photograph of the cake cast a long shadow on the walkway, but the name glowed above it. I whispered to Nathan, "Let that cake always remind them. The one who held silence wasn't defeated. The one who baked justice is still here." We stepped outside. The evening breeze touched my hairpin. The flowers whispered. Cameras flashed. Guests lingered in awe. And I knew, tonight, the cake had truly risen into legend, into legacy, into truth. That evening, after the guests had gone and the lights in Ellie House dimmed to a soft hush, I sat beside Nathan in the main foyer. The glass doors reflected our silhouettes, and above us, still aglow in the amber light, hung the photograph of that long-ago birthday cake. Nathan leaned closer and said, "Grandma, someone asked me today, what did that cake really do?" I smiled gently. It wasn't meant to be eaten. It was meant to be remembered. It started a conversation. We stepped outside, down the stone path lit by garden lights, the young trees swaying lightly in the breeze. The air was clean, tinged with earth and the crispness of early evening. The silver hairpin in my hair caught a glimmer of light. "Were you ever afraid?" Nathan asked, watching the breeze tug at my skirt. I paused. "Afraid? No, not anymore. A woman who's been ignored long enough stops fearing silence. I only wished others would never have to be as quiet as I was." I turned to him with a steady voice. "Starting tomorrow, Ellie House launches a mobile legal outreach. We'll visit senior centers, park benches, cafes, anywhere elders gather. We'll go to them, not wait for them to come to us." Nathan looked surprised. "You're going out there? In person?" I nodded. "Yes, because justice does not sit behind a desk. It walks." In the months that followed, our outreach vans rolled across Cleveland, small teams offering free legal advice, workshops, even storytelling circles. Nathan took charge of the digital program, organizing online sessions for families and teens about respecting the elderly. One morning, an email from the Cleveland Gazette arrived in my inbox. "Cake Legacy: How a Showdown Birthday Birthed a Movement." Attached was an article, complete with photos of the center, Nathan at the podium, and a quote from Miguel. "The woman who baked justice fed everyone who hungered for truth." I sat alone in my modest office, gazing at the cake photo framed on the wall. Nathan was across the room, answering emails, replying to social media comments, fielding interview requests. That night, before bed, he placed the silver hairpin in my hand. "Grandma," he said quietly, "I keep this near my heart." I squeezed his hand. "Then keep the fire too, my love." On the bedroom wall above my desk, a new plaque had been added. "From hallway to home, legacy lives on." And as I lay back in bed, listening to the wind brush the window panes, I let my eyes drift shut with a small smile. No anger, no bitterness, just a quiet truth. If they ever put you outside the door, buy the house. And invite the world in. Because here, in Ellie House, the cake didn't just rise, it became a map. For every soul who's ever been left behind, it leads them home. If this story made you feel something rage, redemption, or the quiet ache of truth, then you're not alone. Stories like Ellie's aren't just fiction. They are reminders that dignity doesn't retire, that justice can come in whispers, and that even a birthday cake can carry a revolution. If you believe in remembering the forgotten, if you believe wisdom speaks loudest when it's been silenced the longest, then this is your place. Hit that subscribe button for more true stories from the quietest woman in the room, and don't forget to tap the hype button if you believe justice deserves celebration. Thank you for listening. This is Grandma True Stories, where memory becomes the sharpest voice in the room. And we're just getting started.